Sienna Reserve Orchard Road located along Orchard Road immediately west of the Bird Sanctuary Trail. Applicant Insight Land Development is requesting preliminary subdivision and site plan approval associated with the subdivision of land to accommodate 10-lot single-family residential development on a 5.94 acre parcel located in R-3 single-family residential district in Dakota Town, Webster.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Nope.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay.
You didn't go. Keep it up.
Good evening, my name is Megan Strini with BME Associates. I'm here on behalf of Inside Land Development in Newfield. We're here for Sienna Reserve. It's located north of North Ponds Park along Orchard Road, just south of Blue Creek Drive, a little bit east of Holt Road. This is under R3 single family zoning, and we are here for the preliminary plan approval of the subdivision of Sienna Reserve with the following lot standards. 75-foot minimum lot width, 15 feet between houses, 40-foot front setback, 50 rear, and a minimum lot size of 18,500 square feet. These plans are consistent with the ones presented at the July 20th sketch plan meeting. The cluster dimensional plans were presented at the meeting, and as there were no issues with the cluster development, we therefore proceeded with finalizing the cluster design. The site will also be accessed by a 26-foot wide private drive with one gutter on the low side to catch drainage and a turnaround for providing emergency service access to adequately service the site. This private drive will be maintained by the HOA. And along with that, we'll be providing conservation easements. The overall benefit of these easements will provide reduced disturbance areas along the eastern and western areas of the site, and will provide a total of 1.7 acres of undisturbed area. This is just about a third of the site, and that would not be obtainable with a typical conventional plan. The 65-foot wide conservation easement on the eastern property line is also along the site's highest area of the property and will contain the most valuable trees, and these will be protected under the conservation easement. Along with that, for utilities, water main will be connected to the main along Orchard Road. The sanitary will be connected to the existing manhole at Blue Creek Drive under a filed easement. And stormwater will be handled internally with the stormwater pond as shown on the rendering here. It has been designed for DEC and town standards, and the drainage report was provided to the town for review. There have been concerns about drainage in the area, and with the pond design, the outflow of the pond will reduce the overall outflows at a controlled rate as well, and will maintain existing drainage conditions. The proposed pond is also going to be under an HOA easement. We have received PRC comments, and I actually have hard copies of responses. I understand that the digital file that I sent to Josh was sent a little late, but I do have copies in case anyone wants any that will address drainage and screening concerns. I would like to move forward with the preliminary plan approval. I'm here for any technical questions.
You said you have copies of your responses?
Yes.
Calls from adjacent neighbors. Yeah, at the PRC meeting, there used to be several issues that were brought up by different parties. Okay. yeah, there were issues at PRC. The biggest issue there that I saw was lot number 5. The reality is that's crunched right in there. It's a small triangle, goes back to nothing in the back.
Right, so we've taken a look at that, and with the grading exhibit that I provided to you with the responses, we were able to move grading further into the site to limit the disturbance along there and to maintain that lot area as much as possible.
Again, this is, I think you're kind of familiar with what you had, sketch plan. This is a public hearing. I know, I guess there are some neighbors that have concerns here, so I think what I'd like to do, okay, the board, is open the public hearing and see what comments kind of guide us a little bit. I mean, you folks live there, you know the area,
Yep,
okay?
there are 2 of us here prepared to speak on behalf of the board.
Okay, and what we'll do is, we'll ask
Oh, up to the mic?
you, we'll ask you to go up to the mic, give us your name and your address.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. I'm Mary Catherine Dappin, address is 797 Blue Creek Drive. So we're the property that is butting up to Lot 5 and Lot 6.
And I'm Bruce Knapp, 800 Blue Creek. On these preliminary plans, it's listed as the Brimstein property, but that's about 8-9 years ago.
So we have several concerns. One in particular is drainage, like you discussed. We brought photographs of what kind of drainage issues we've had back there. There's a town right-of-way that's a ditch, and I know some folks were out yesterday from the town taking a look at that ditch. I'm happy to share photographs with you of issues that we've had in our backyards.
You can pass them down.
Okay. Our original plans have that it's designated a flood hazard zone. So I just wanted to confirm whether or not that's still accurate, if it's still a flood hazard zone.
I couldn't answer. What area is specifically are you referring to?
Lots, houses 777, 781, 789, 792, and 772 are all located, they're all in a designated flood hazard zone, according to our original maps.
Yes, there are portions of each of the properties within the flood.
Okay. So I wasn't sure if that was a concern or not. We have a double prop sump pump that pretty much runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The property that was built next to us, 792 Blue Creek Drive, had to have a pump constantly pumping water out of the basement during the entire construction. And we want to know how the stormwater is going to be kept out of our backyard, and if the drainage gets worse after this development, who's liable for that? Did I miss anything on drainage?
Nope. Okay, those are questions. What we'll do is we'll have the engineers, address that.
Okay,
What they propose to do.
okay, thank you.
I'm sure she's got it all in her head. Is there anything else you want to bring up?
We want to talk about the sewer and the easement that's been provided to go into Blue Creek Drive.
Excuse me, would you prefer, you're taking notes of that, is that okay?
Yeah.
And you want to address each one first, or just, let them go through?
Okay.
Whatever you like.
Okay. So
Okay,
we understand that there's the sewer easement that the residents of 789 have signed the easement for. We want assurances that the infrastructure there on Blue Creek Drive can support the additional homes that are being proposed on this development, that existing infrastructure for sewage. We'd like to know where the manhole is and whether Blue Creek Drive will have to be torn up for the installation. And then we're wondering if we on Blue Creek Drive have any say in terms of the sewer easement, or is it just the residents at 789 that signed the agreement with the developer? We wanted to know more about who is going to maintain the sewer easement, whether it's the town or the HOA. I believe the developer originally told folks that it would be the HOA, but then there's confusion about whether or not it will be the town. We saw in the drawings that their pipe in the easement's not centered in the middle. It's going over towards 793 Blue Creek Drive. Resident at 793 Blue Creek Drive, who is Gregory Schuler, is not granting permission to the developer to use his property for that easement. And then we're curious to know whether the pond, the retention pond that's proposed, was part of the deal for 789, giving an easement for the sewer coming through their property. So those are those sewer questions. Did I miss anything?
No, I think part of that easement agreement was, there was a little misconception that it was 6 to 8 single-story homes when that easement agreement was procured. And now we're up to 10 two-story sizable homes. So just, that's another question.
The pictures that you gave me showing the flooding, when were they taken?
There were several years ago, probably within the past 10 years.
Had anything like that similar?
We have standing water in the ditch in that right-of-way, the town right-of-way. We have standing water in there quite often. It does not flow one way or another. And I believe that the residents at 789 have standing water in their backyard that the developer has said that he's going to fix as a result of the development.
So these pictures that we're looking at are not recent?
They're not most recent, no. They're not like, the most recent rainlet yet.
Springtime, that ditch is full of water. Personally, I clean out the ditch
So it's not just
to
standing.
keep it flowing and keep the mosquitoes down.
And then just overall property concerns, I mean, we're under the impression that Webster discourages dead ends. So we did hear tonight that there's a turnaround, and we did hear tonight that it's going to be a private drive. We're of course concerned that we've lived, on that property for 21 years now, and we're going to have headlights coming straight into our homes on that road coming in through the development. But our main concern are the setbacks. So you can see that there's that 65-foot conservation easement for the bird sanctuary trail. There's a 50-foot conservation easement from Linda Lane, and we have 15 feet on our Blue Creek Drive. So everything's going to be pushed back towards the edge of our property. So we'd like to request consideration for a conservation easement, a 65-foot conservation easement from our property into this new development. Our original survey maps show a minimum rear setback on our property of 50 feet. We'd like to know if this is going to be a 55-plus community, how large the homes will be, whether there will be sidewalks, sheds, boats, or trailers. And then we do have questions about the minimum lot area requirements. We looked on the map, and I'm not a professional surveyor, I'm a businesswoman, but it looks like there's a requirement of 22,000 square feet, but the proposed on the plans is 18,500. I think
That's because it's coming in under a cluster development, which does allow the reduction. However, even though it does, they are showing larger than what is actually allowed in that district. So they are a little bit bigger than what they.
Okay. Yeah, that's our concern is that these are very large homes on very small lots. And then we'd like to know more about how the clearing is going to take place. So back to that conservation easement, I mean, there's a lot of wildlife back there. Like I said, we've lived there for 21 years. There are deer, fisher cat, turkey, a ton of wildlife. And we're concerned if that's a bird sanctuary trail, where are these deer going to go if they don't have a conservation easement around the whole thing? We're also concerned about noise. Like, since we've lived there, we've had the Holiday Inn built, a bank built, KinderCare, 2 senior living complexes, and the North Ponds townhomes. And I'm going to tell you, it's significantly reduced the wildlife back there, and it's significantly increased the noise from Route 104. We can hear the cars right over 104, all the way back on Blue Creek Drive. So we're concerned about all of those trees being taken down. We're concerned about the retaining pond and mosquitoes and geese. We want to know whether a fountain will be installed. We want to know who's going to be maintaining the pond, and why the pond is located where it is, and why it's not further out towards Orchard. So I think that's in a nutshell. Like, if the town is going to approve this development, the Blue Creek Drive neighborhood is requesting a conservation easement at our end of the property, as been afforded on the other side of the property.
Okay.
Did I miss anything?
Nope.
I suppose there might be some people from Linda Lane or other folks from Blue Creek Drive that might want to say something, but that's what we met about when we put together in terms of our concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not a very good public speaker, so you'll have to forgive me.
Just go ahead now, there you go.
Can you hear me? I heard that the frontage is only going to be 75 foot. Isn't there some sort of a code that in Webster it's a 100-foot frontage?
She's questioning this front.
The 75-foot frontage on
Setback, are you talking?
the, no, the frontage of the property. On the houses,
No, it's not.
No, a lot, the standard lot, this is 100 feet, this is cluster development, so.
Yeah, cluster, so this is something, yeah, the width of the lots can be 75 feet. They are, most of them they're showing is 100 feet. And,
Well, I live on Linda Lane. I live at 5 Linda Lane, and my name is Florence Fleming. Now, this ditch that was built in 1970s was dug by the town of Webster, and it's on private property. Mr. and Mrs. Gentle, who are out of town, they wanted to be here, but they couldn't change their plans. That's on their property. I have a concern that the flood plan for 100 years, I know we don't know if we're going to have that, goes into this ditch. This ditch hasn't been cleaned out ever. I tried to do it, but I'm old now, so I can't do it anymore. I just feel that the pond is going to cause a major problem for us on Linda Lane, all four of us on Linda Lane. And it's never been dug out, and Mr. and Mrs. Gentle had it complete on their property, which is all on their property. Okay, my other concern is the overflow for the pond. Where is that going to go? Is it going to that little pipe that's behind my house? I don't know. It's not going to take a lot of overflow. If we get, like we've had massive rainstorms lately, that little 6-inch pipe isn't going to take nothing. And that's my other concern. And you spent a ton of houses on that property is excessive. I know they're trying to do as much as they can, to make as much money as they can, but I think it's an excessive amount of houses for that 5 acres. Let's see if I get anything else. Oh, the easement. I've spoken to Mr. Tusa about the easement that goes along that property from west to east, goes to the bird sanctuary. And he said they have an easement to clean that out. And I don't see any reason why they can't take that and open it up and put the drainage to the bird path, because it's a very, 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 very deep ditch. And it would take a lot of water away from where they're going to dump it. And I guess that's all I got to say.
okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm not a very good speaker.
You did
All right, fine, good.
Thank you.
you. Is there anyone else wishing to comment? Yes, sir.
Hello, Dan Dermesich. I live at 789 Blue Creek Drive. I'm the residence that has granted the easement availability to the developer. The issue of the drainage ditch in the back is an important one, I think, to look at. I know that some of the engineers were over there the other day to look at the possibilities for it in terms of preventing overflow or whatever. In fact, I had a discussion with Josh earlier tonight, and their assessment was that the water should be flowing to the east. And for the past 25 years that I've lived there, it has always flowed to the west, and with quite force as well to the west. So I think that's something that the engineers need to look at very carefully in terms of whether or not it makes sense to have it go east. I mean, if it does, fine, but I don't think it does. I think it should be going to the right, and I think rather than keeping it open as a ditch, I think installing some type of 10-inch, 12-inch pipe there that could be covered with land rather than just creating a deeper ditch, I think makes more sense, especially if the retaining pond that we're talking about is supposed to control the flow of the water, the volume of the water coming through there. So I think that's another piece, I think, that both the engineers and the developer needs to look at. The only other piece that I wanted to comment on was that my neighbor and I, Mr. Schuler, our understanding from the developer was that there would be no more than 8 sites. In fact, that's one of the criteria that I looked at in terms of agreeing to the easement. And the whole idea of having 10 there seems a bit congested. And I think it presents problems in terms of, the density of people being there and the issues of noise and light pollution, especially with the elimination of the trees. So I think those are 2 additional items that need to be considered in terms of the development of that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to comment?
Hi, my name is Pat Medina and I live
What is it? I'm sorry.
Pat Medina and I live on 677 R Road. And I know that basically I shouldn't be touching what they're saying, but it's just a reassurance when this developer went to develop Landon Woods. I cried, I shout, and I opposed.
Sir, excuse me, you need to talk into the microphone, not to them.
And I opposed 100% because basically they were gonna put down all the trees. So basically, generation of deer and coyotes and foxes and this and that. In my mind, I said, I'm not gonna see them anymore. Well, nature is very resilient, and they just finished putting the road. I still see them in my backyard, the foxes, the coyotes, the deer, and geese. With that said, I also had a concern because basically there is a creek that runs along my property, and especially in rainy days and in the springtime, it totally overflows my property. But it's been raining hard these past days, and since they installed engineering, the retaining ponds. The level of flow control, if before it was 100%, the level is now, very well controlled, probably 10. Also, I was concerned about nature because basically myself and my wife and all my kids were lovers of nature, right? Well, they have done an outstanding job in putting trees all along the property. So to that respect, and I'm not, don't think that they pay me or anything. I'm still pissed because basically I was the most affected in there because I lost total privacy. The guys on Claim Road, yeah, they are on Claim, but I am right there and my land goes halfway where all the properties are built. So in that respect, all the privacy, but they have put some trees in there which it's nice. That's all I have to say. So
Okay, thank you.
looking from that perspective.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I guess I do have a question.
Go ahead.
My name is Sarah Parody. So me and my husband live on 9 Linda Lane. We've been there a little over 3.5 years now. I guess my one question would be, what is the value going to be of these homes? Just looking at what type of people are going to be welcomed into our neighborhood. And you want to go off of the first speaker. We don't want to see any of the woods, the bird sanctuary taken down, taken away. We do like the nature aspect. That's why we moved there in the first place. Sorry, can't catch my breath. So I guess that was the question I had is what type of people, income-wise, is going to be coming into that neighborhood?
Well, I'm sure the cost of what these houses will be, they're not gonna be low-level income houses.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I think probably a better way of thinking this is it's not subsidized housing by any means. Government-funded housing. It's not apartments, they're single-family,
Okay.
individual residential units.
But being
Today's
single-
prices, developer knows better than I do, but they wouldn't be any less than 350,000 to 500,000.
Okay.
I guess would be the range of them.
But
I guess.
single family, you're adding tons of traffic down there, more people to the park, kids, just added to,
See, there's a catch to all this. This is the bottom line. I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but there's a piece of property. Someone owns it. I've used this scenario so many times. A farmer or whoever owns a piece of property. Day comes, he isn't going to use it anymore. He's been paying taxes, and everybody's been getting the benefits of, wildlife and so on and so forth. Well, there comes a point that that person, male, female, whatever, decides, you know what, we can't afford these taxes anymore. We're going to sell the property. The developer, whoever comes along, and buys it. Well, then everybody in the neighborhood always goes crazy. Oh, you can't let them do this, you can't let them do that. Now, the problem with the drainage, 100% agreement. That has to be resolved, no question. But the fact that the property is sold for residential use, which is an allowed use in that district, we have to do the best we can to work with it, because that person has the right to develop it. So it puts us in a dilemma too. I hate seeing all this. I've used this before. My wife was one of the original. Her name was a Clem. Clem Road, that was her family farm, her family's. You think I didn't catch hell when I used to come home from meetings? It's like, why are you guys approving all this stuff, It's because that's what's allowed. It isn't because we like it. It's just the way it is. The only alternative is for people to buy those pieces of property. That's all we can do. So what we're doing tonight is the best we can do with this. And there are some legitimate concerns, drainage and so on, and we'll have to resolve those.
I just didn't want to go home without paying that bit of piece.
I'm sorry?
I just didn't want to leave without saying that.
Oh, no, that's fine,
All right.
that's good.
But thank you.
Good point.
I have just one other thing I want to say. When they bought that property, it was an estate that Mr. Nagy had died, and his grandson had sold it. There was no sewers on there. The only thing they have is water. And that's all there was. So they knew there's going to be problems with the sewers and everything too. And I just think, I totally agree with the lady on the Blue Card. She has it spot down. And, a lot of concerns.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, well,
Sure, yeah, well, just give us your name and address.
Sure.
My name's Kyle Devlin, 797 Blue Creek Drive. And I just got the sewer. I know Mr. Anderson, Eric Anderson, had a problem with the sewer coming through the neighbor's yard. I feel like that's kind of like taking a shortcut. The town ought to do something and make it maybe go the right way instead of through somebody's property. And he didn't like the idea of these cluster homes being there either on the last meeting about this property. So, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and again, see, that's part of the code. The code allows it but with a cluster development, the requirement with that, see, it doesn't just mean a guy can come in and, I'll just give you a little brief one here. You got 50 acres of land. Let's say the developer can build 75 houses on that 50 acres. It's normal, conforming to code. Well,
I couldn't drive
after
home.
he comes in and says, well, there's some nice creeks running through there, there's some woods, and we want to preserve it. So if I preserve that, can I build the same number of houses on less of the land being disturbed? Follow me? In other words, you're condensing the lots a little bit. So the code says you can build them on 75 foot wide. And what this board has done pretty religiously, actually, is to make it a minimum of like 85 feet. So that reduces the size of the lots a little bit, and then all that remaining land, doesn't mean you can put any more houses. The house number is the same. The only difference is preserving some of the open space. So, go back to this. Part of what they're proposing here is the back area over here to the east, that area there. They actually own to it, but it's not usable land. That will have to be signed off as shown as open space, preserved lands, not to be developed or anything done with. Same with the piece down on Orchard Street there, where it comes to wedge kind of there, to the west side. So now, that brings it down to where's the difficult part. Probably the difficult part here is where you folks live,
Right,
to the north.
right.
So now I think that's the part we need to get into addressing what can we do with it.
Right,
Okay.
that's really why we're here, is to address why
Totally
only.
understand.
Not saying they can't build,
Yeah.
they can.
Where did you have Yeah, there is. It probably is. Shouldn't be here. No, it shouldn't be. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here, as always. With me tonight is Martin Yonda, along with Megan, and he will answer the very specific drainage details for you on a professional level. But I'd like to take a minute to answer some of the emotional questions that my good neighbors have. I've been doing this a long time, a lot of developments in Webster. We have 11 subdivisions, and when developing land, there's really this shortened, Mr. Kashani said it nicely, there's a piece of land, there's a code that has to be met, and that's the law. So if we were to develop this piece of land, and I love this piece of land, not as much as you neighbors do, but I do love this piece of land. If we were to develop this in a conventional style, which they've already proved the density, it's 10 lots, that's what the law allows. So if we were to sell it to Ryan Homes or a national company, they're not interested in conservation easements, they're not interested in preserving 5 feet or 10 feet or any trees because it's costly. So if this property was sold, or if I developed it as a conventional neighborhood, there would be not one single piece of greenery left. Not because I wouldn't want it there, but to meet the codes that the town requires for drainage, all the properties would have to have drainage easements on the swale or property line. That would mean that there would be no trees left at all, because that's what the code would call for. I would like very much to keep every single tree I can and still develop it. So we've left the conservation easements there and trying to keep as much of that property green as we can. As to your question to cost, everybody knows what costs are doing. A sheet of plywood used to be 12 bucks, now it was 60 bucks. So these houses will probably be, not just for that reason, but it's a beautiful section, it's in a wonderful area, and if we preserve as many trees as we can, the houses there will probably be in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. That's driven by development costs, material costs, etc. So they'll be well above the cost of the surrounding area. So as far as value, it's going to be a plus. As far as the issue with what kind of houses was brought up, I don't know where people got the idea they would be giant two-story homes. Now, we can't say anything about income levels or who will buy or who will not buy, but if I had to guess, based on all our other developments, I would say out of those 10 homes, this is a guess, 9 of them will be ranches. It's not suited for families. We have an HOA, so if we develop this conventional, there would be a cul-de-sac backing up to the Blue Creek neighbors. Blue Creek neighbors would have 3 backyards of the Smiths and the Joneses, which is fine, and along with the family community, you have swimming pools and sheds and play sets and everything else that goes along with having a family. We feel what we've proposed is going to be much more private. The HOA will not have sheds, swimming pools, play sets. None of those things will be allowed, because my buyers, which is going to be me and people old, they don't want all those things anymore. So you'll eliminate all of those things in your backyard and preserve as many trees as this design allows, which is far more than a conventional plan will allow. Will there be 2 stories? This is America. Could somebody come in? Yes, they could. My guess is, because of the way the property is, the HOA costs, and the restrictions, I would say probably not. But we cannot say to you there will be no 2-story homes. I would put 20 bucks down that says there won't be, but we can't, and the board can't guarantee that either. So, and then a couple other things we came up with. As far as the end of the road, I understand that's an issue for Dan and his family and our other neighbor. We have photographs. I don't know how detailed you want to get, but if you want to look at it, right up 250, there's a beautiful townhome development, and we had the very same situation. The road ended, and there's a beautiful series. I don't like just a fence. To me, it doesn't look natural. So we have 10-foot pine trees, and then a 6-foot fence and a pine tree, and it's a beautiful, completely visual block, totally blocks the headlights, and still looks natural. So we proposed that here, as well as until the final clearing gets done, we won't really know every tree that's left. But we're going to augment this whole entire back property line with pine trees. We have a farm, we have 8 to 10-foot trees, they're beautiful. The one neighbor said, well, I don't want pine trees, I want arborvitaes. I don't know if he's here tonight or not. Oh, okay, good, didn't recognize you. So we're willing to switch those. My only concern with arborvitaes is the deer eat them, but...
Green giant arborvitaes, not emerald green.
So that specific tree, we're happy to...
I have tons of them by my land, no deer to eat them.
Then they shouldn't eat the ones I plant either. But we're happy to make those
They
kind
grow
of...
2 to 3 foot a year.
Well, we're happy to put those in, and if Dan wants the same kind, we're happy to do that too. So between the fence, the barrier, and the trees, we're as concerned as you are, A, because you're my neighbors, and B, the better that looks for you, the better it looks for the future people too. One other concern, I know the board's addressed number 5. The lot's 100 feet wide. We're gonna try to preserve 15 to 20 feet of that natural buffer. We're gonna enhance it. The average houses that we're building in Abington, which is a Penfield development, those houses range from 42 feet to 58 feet wide. Now that doesn't mean somebody could come and build a different style house, but that's about the average width. So that leaves more than enough room for the property on lot 5 to have even more space than that if they wanted it. The issue of a skinny backyard, my buyers don't want a big backyard. They're not having pools, they're not having decks, they're not having swimming pools, or any of those other things. They want a little piece of nature and as small a grass area as possible. So we looked at that very carefully, but we really think that that's something that will fit nicely on that lot. I think I've addressed any other questions that I didn't get, Mr. Kashani?
No, I think you're good. Let the board has some concerns and go from there.
If there's no questions for me, I'll invite
Not right now.
Martin up just to address the drainage. We know there's an issue with the ditch. You have another resident, Mr. Kashani might want to speak.
Well, I'm just wondering if with the drainage pond.
To the microphone, please.
Well, I could talk really loud, okay?
Well,
Well, I don't want to go up to the microphone. You can hear me.
No, sit down. You don't want to listen. Sorry.
Well,
You need to cooperate.
all I want is to know on the pond, is there going to be a fountain? Get rid of.
Listen, the microphone needs to pick you up,
Well,
and it only works through
I'm
the
heavy.
microphone.
These are recorded, so that's why you have to use the microphone.
all right, all I want to know is there's going to be
Give us your
a
name and
fountain
address.
coming in. I'm Barb Cruz and I live at 789 Blue Creek.
That's what we need to have.
You're welcome. I'm wondering about a fountain coming
This
up
isn't
through
helping
the
me,
pond
guys.
to get rid of the mosquitoes. That's what I'm wondering, because there's going to, a pond with lots of water in it is going to be a bed for a swarming of mosquitoes. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll answer that very briefly and then I'll invite on Mr. Yonda. This is going to be an HOA. Just very briefly, it's the 10 neighbors. They basically take care of the property. They each pay a monthly fee. So that question would be up to the HOA and the eventual neighbors. If they all get together and say, we'd love to contribute to a fountain and lights, they'll put it in. So that's not something we'll do or impose on our future buyers. That's something that if you were one of the buyers, you'd have to make a vote and say, yes, we want it. And so that won't be going in now, but it's a possibility based on who buys those properties.
Martin Yanda, BME Associates. I'll try to address the drainage question. So first, why that pond is in that corner? It is because it's the low point of the area. That's where all the drainage is going. That's why the pond has to be there, right? The pond, as it is proposed, will be the water level about 2 feet below the existing ground. What's happening today is all the drainage from the site drains to that corner, and that's what's causing the flooding on that property. Also, when this subdivision was designed and developed, a swale was put along this property line on their side, and that's what was discussed, you know, if that drainage should go in that direction or this direction, then we should take a look at it. We did take a look at it. It basically splits in this area. This goes towards the main tree. This goes back to that corner where all the drainage is going. In this corner, about here, is a storm sewer, which is connected to the subdivision storm sewer system and continues flowing north. That's where that drainage is going today. And I was wondering if there are some issues if that pipe maybe is plugged or, you know, it's silted in a little bit or not. But by building this pond, we'll collect a lot of drainage going to that corner in the pond and will release it through a controlled outlet structure. That's only 3-inch orifice and only like flows like 100-year flood would be going over the grade of the structure, but in any case, it will be reduced under the existing conditions. So in general, if you look at previous projects we've done, these structures help to control water and to address drainage issues. So with that being said, are there any additional comments on the drainage or?
No, I think that's all stuff that will have to be.
And Rudy mentioned that he will look at that channel and if it's needed to be adjusted, right, clean it up to allow that drainage going more freely towards that storm sewer pipe. Also, if I may, that buffer was discussed, right? Providing additional, whatever, 15, 20 feet of buffer. What's growing there today is in a very bad shape. There are a lot of dead trees, there's a green ash dying, and the trees are spaced maybe 30 feet apart. It really doesn't do much. Actually, Rudy is proposing to put the evergreen trees there that will provide real buffer. I have a photo from inside of the property taken towards the backyards, and it's what, 120 feet inside, and you can see that there are a lot of dead trees, if I can.
Well, I think, going back to PRC, and I think my comment at that meeting was, comments from different departments, was the north end of the property was extremely tight. Lot 5, nobody'd ever be able to put a pool. They've been looking for variances to do anything because of the shape of the lot. And the space between the end of the house and the property line is tight. There's woods in there, there's not much there. Long story short, in lot number 6 also. My thought was leave lot 6, take out lot 5, take lot number 7, 8, and 9, shrink those down to 85 feet instead of 100 feet. You could move lot 6 south. That would give you, you could end up with, I think the lady here mentioned, a buffer in the back there. You can increase that buffer between those properties. Yes, there's going to be trees in there that are dead from the ash and so on and so forth. They're going to have to come out of there. That could be some landscaping replaced. But I think the simple solution to create a buffer between this project and Blue Creek is to reduce, again, 7, 8, 9, down from 100 feet to 85. That gives you 45 feet. That would move 45, if you pull 50 feet out, that would move lot 6 down. That would give you a bigger buffer up along that property line to appease the neighbors in the neighborhood. And it's no big effect on the project. Lot number 5, I think that's a terrible lot right there.
I wouldn't worry about putting a pool in there because it's going to be restricted.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why you don't understand why,
But look at the space, see what I'm saying? That would create an equal buffer all the way through there, Dave, is what I'm getting at. I mean, look at the project. I mean, it's okay, but it's maxed out. Cluster development. I mean, cluster development is to preserve natural features. Okay, what we're preserving here is some pieces of woods in the backyards of these houses. I mean, this actually could go on either way. It's a determination of this board that took it as a cluster development, which is okay. But we stretched it. But I think there's gotta be a compromise here to say, see what I'm saying, Charlie? See that lot, how big that is, that triangular shape? Yes. I mean, it's gonna be issues in the future for variance and so on.
But there won't be any pools or any sheds as mentioned. It's just a house.
I
Right.
understand that. Yeah, you can't put a,
So-
put a deck.
Why we,
If you did.
Right. That's what I'm saying, see, that's where the issue comes.
why we came up with 10, first off, we did the density calculations per the code, and it was over 11 lots, actually, 11 point something, right? We provided those calculations, then the conventional layout fit comfortably 10 lots, so we came up with 10. And if that triangular lot, you know, we could take a look at it probably and maybe widen it, because we can reduce the width of the lower lots. But that's up to Rudy, because that will affect, you know, the quality of the lots order. So I would ask him to address that.
Well, okay, I don't want to drag it on, but that's my opinion. It's up to the board, what do you guys want to do? I mean, look at the overall, there.
To me, it does seem to be a fairly steep drop off. Comparatively, the rest of the site and the north property line there. I noticed that it is 9 feet higher than the invert of the drainage swale that's in the back. 7, 8 feet higher than the sanitary rim elevation over the Blue Creek.
Just so you know, the counters are 1 foot counters. We usually show 2 foot counters, so it kind of looks denser, right?
I'm looking at the,
Yeah.
you got 393 and over the sanitary manhole at Blue Creek is 385. So it's quite a bit higher than that area. Can you talk more about the existing easements that are on this Blue Creek Drive? I'm seeing on your drawings, it appears to be an easement that's a north-south easement that runs behind lots 789 and then the little parcel to the north, just north of your pond there. And then there's also an easement you mentioned too, is an existing parcel running along the northern property line. That is a town drainage easement?
That's a town drainage easement, yes.
Does that town drainage easement extend onto this parcel in any location?
It doesn't.
Now, there also seems to be in the southwest corner of 789, a stream, and I noticed too, the seeker form, it says that there's a surface water body in the area referencing some kind of stream or something. Is that an actual designated stream? On the edge of the site?
No, there are no designated streams, no.
Because I know some of the people had mentioned too that this is in a flood hazard area. And again, that's something that on the seeker forms, it does not indicate that this is in a 100-year floodway or a 500-year floodway.
It's not within the site, it's to the north within, you know, the Blue Creek.
So it's farther north.
Yes, yeah, it's farther.
And again, this is not a designated creek that ties into that floodplain area.
That's correct.
So when this is in a hazard classification, this is what, X, C, whatever?
But we didn't see anything within the site, so there's a 100-year floodplain to the north.
Looking on the elevations that you show, this is the more recent, the drawing is handed us tonight in response to the PRC comments. The parcel to the north of 789 is Lindbergh. And the way it's drawn, it looks like it's the inlet to the stormwater pipe. This is the primary pipe that's picking up drainage coming off.
That's correct, yes.
To the north. In the back of 789, there's also what looks like a pipe coming out that's at elevation 383. Where does that come from?
I believe it's staying sump pump.
It's from a sump pump, let's try
I
it.
think, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's still here.
appears too that there's a bridge that goes across the swale in the back of the subdivision there. Is that true?
I believe so,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. And then continuing to the east, once you get onto the back of parcel, just the neighbor at 793, there's also a pipe that has a number on that of 784. Is that a pipe that's flowing into the corner, or is that flowing to the east?
Three 84.08,
Yes.
that, I think that's
Is that-
just a culvert which is kind of under raised area. I think there's fenced area or something.
Do you know if that's an inlet for going flowing to the
It
east?
goes,
or an outlet?
it's going west.
Okay. So there's some kind of a pipe that's underneath the swale? Is that,
Yeah, for a portion of that swale, there's a pipe.
okay.
And
Do you have any idea about how long that section of pipe is?
I,
Almost the length of my property. It was there when I bought it.
Okay. And there's
Otherwise, I have no backyard.
so there's a section of pipe that goes some undetermined distance to the east, and on top of it, there's a swale.
yes, that's correct.
And then also behind 793, there appears from the aerial photograph to be a fenced-in garden that's back there that's actually within the drainage swale, the drainage easement itself. Does that structure that's in the easement, is that impeding any of the flow?
When I walked it, I didn't think that anything is impeding the flow, because this swale, basically, it does not collect that much, just the backyards.
Okay, for this one parcel?
Yeah.
So from your drawing, this is really showing that it is going from east to west and then to the north, the drainage on one side.
Derek, if I could interrupt, just for your clarification, and I've spoken to both of the direct neighbors there, that ditch is, I don't know how old it is, and it's silted in a little bit. So we've agreed, of course, I'll have to coordinate with Josh and the engineering staff. It's, I wouldn't say handwork, but it's literally a tiny mini. So we've agreed once BME and the town staff gives us the approval to literally get a crew and handwork that ditch back to its original state, which is going to improve the drainage. Not so much for the, I imagine somebody piped that somewhere in the last so many years, which he doesn't have the water problem, but we're going to literally hand clean that ditch out. It's going to help our drainage, and it's going to help the ditch to him. So just so you know, Derek, that's something we've committed to. We just got to fine tune the technical
Sure.
details of exactly what Josh wants.
And asking more to follow, because there was conversation on which directions it's going. When you go by the elevations that you show on the drawing, it does clearly show it going east to west.
Sure.
And then the
Could I-
detention pond itself,
Just one issue with that, and
Excuse me.
if I could, and that's
Excuse me.
as I mentioned.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
excuse me. So one of the comments that did come up was the possibility of hard piping, you know, from the pond itself, it's connected together with these two inverts. In your opinion, for this particular area, does that lend any kind of benefit to helping or causing an impediment on the drainage in the area?
I think if you make that connection, you'll have to put inlet there, right? And then how that drainage from the swell would get to it. So I
So-
think if you leave a space between the two pipes so any drainage can continue.
From the surrounding land?
Yeah, to the north.
The neighbors to the west?
Yeah,
So forth, everyone that drains into it has the ability to tie into it.
yeah.
If you put in a pipe on it, you would effectively have to fill in the neighbor's property too.
Yeah. That area is in that drainage easement, right? So I think the improvements Rudy is proposing would be okay to put in that easement with your approval.
The existing swale out there, I know it was doing a nice arc around that edge of it. with the way the easement is shown, is that actually an easement? To me, it looks like it's outside easement at this point. That's something that needs to be corrected as part of, for being able to maintain it by the HOA or the town or something in the future.
For the
It's
easement
the section
on
of
the
the-
existing lot, right?
The section of the swale is going in the back of 789.
Yeah.
It flows as an arc, it's outside of the, not everything flows in right angles.
That's on lot 789, right? So I
Yeah,
don't
the
know,
easement itself, does that need to be adjusted to make sure that
I
there's
think
some sort of solution?
that would be for the town and for the lot owner if he's willing to grant that. It might be that the drainage easement was placed originally when the subdivision was done, but the swale was put in different location, right?
And the lines you have on it are presumably the easement from some record now.
Is that easement that's there now, the existing one on Blue Creek, is that clear through there? I mean, there's not trees growing and filling it up or anything?
Correct.
So that's clear?
Yeah, it needs a little handwork, but there's no trees,
Yeah.
no shrubs, then keeps it all cut.
It's the swale, yeah.
And your pond is draining over to that drainage area, to the corner, in the back of lot 789, on the other side. I don't know, up to you guys. The only concern I've got is to make a bigger buffer along Blue Creek, back to Blue Creek. But if you're comfortable with that, fine.
I think we are committed to buffer, right? But efficient buffer, effective buffer would be the evergreens. You can see that picture. Those trees don't do much. There are not that many, they're spaced like 40 feet apart. A lot of them are in bad shape. You can see a lot of them are laying on the ground because, the green ash situation.
So the ash trees, what would you do? You clearing those out of there?
The ones that are dead, yes, had the state look at it. They don't think by next year any of them will be alive, so it's our intent to take them down
Yeah.
if they're either dead or close to dying. And like I say, when I get to that, even if there's not a great stand of hardwoods, even just what grows in the woods naturally, shrubbery, a bush, anything that can be preserved and enhanced with trees makes a difference, because even standing wild bushes, 5-6 feet, and it's a beautiful green head. So I just, on lot 5, I think it's our job, obviously, to meet the town's code, which lot 5 does. I don't think it's my job to determine whether a future resident that wants to pay taxes in the town has a bigger or smaller backyard. They know what it is. I say we let those people decide. So that is important to us to keep, and we're fully committed to work with our neighbors, as I always do, to enhance that buffer till it's as good as it possibly can be. Now, we committed to do the tree and fence buffer at the end of the road, which we do have photographs, and they're available if anybody wants to see them. If we walk it with the most affected neighbors, and they say, instead of some spotted pine trees, it would be really nice to take this fence and tree idea all the way across. We'd be happy to do that. I'd like to look at it once it's cleared and make a decision. Happy to meet with the neighbors. We're committed to a good buffer, but I think lot 5 is important for me to keep, and I think it's of a sizable that we will not have an issue designing a beautiful property.
The fence and the tree picture that you provided us, what does that take?
Pardon me?
The fence and tree
Yep.
picture that we have copies of here, what does that take?
That's a development we talked about earlier. If you go right up 250, there's a townhouse project there, just across the Webster Penfield line. Abington Place is the development, we built 100 homes there, and that's Barclay Park, it's right next door. You can get a really nice visual if you want to see what that looks like. I've used that probably a half a dozen times when I've had to screen it, because the difference between that, especially after a year of growth, it just looks so much more natural to me. We use a cedar fence, 10-foot pine tree, and it really, if it was me living behind that, that's what I would want. So you're welcome to look at it, and I would meet anybody that would like to walk it and show you how I do it.
A couple other questions. The pine trees, how tall would they grow?
They're 8 to 10 foot, 30 years, they could be 30 feet tall.
Okay. So then, the person who puts in this fence, they're gonna have to be responsible, obviously, for maintaining the front and the back. How difficult is it going to be if you've got, say, a pine tree that has grown from 10 feet to 30 feet?
That would be an HOA issue on my 10 neighbors. At that point, I'll probably be in a home or sleeping in the ground. So they would have to take care of that as part of their monthly assessment. If they decide, boy, this thing is 15 feet tall and we want to keep it there, they can hire an arborist to cut them down. So the HOA just has, it's expensive, someone to, I don't want to pay $300 a month, but it has wonderful features on keeping all of our properties, and I have a number of them, really, really well done.
I've been on your development in Barclay, and that is beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
You're doing a good job.
And to me, sense of arrival is extremely important when I come home from work, whether it's my own house or my developments. Sense of arrival is extremely important. And if you take a drive through some of my developments, we've got a number of different designs. For this specific Sienna Reserve, some of them are pretty grand entrances. It's going to be very understated. We actually have a little mill. It'll be a very simple natural sign, a little bit of landscaping. It's not going to be overdone. Some of them call for it. To me, this doesn't. We're going to keep as much buffer in the front as we can. It's going to be a very soft little entrance, tell you where you are, classy, but very understated to fit into that whole natural feel that I see for that property.
Rudy, and like in the town of Penfield, were they private drives?
The townhouse is a private drive. That's an HOA.
Townhouse,
Yep.
Single family house.
Yeah, yep.
They're private drives.
Not on Abington. That was 100 lots. That's a dedicated.
No, that would be big. Okay.
Yeah,
Any small ones?
Yeah, we have a number of them off of 5 Mile Line Road. There's 3 or 4. Yep. Yep, they're private drives.
Okay.
Yeah, no, been around, who knows the ropes, no question.
So the road A, you call it, do I take it from the section that's a 12-foot wide road? Or private driveway?
I think it's 26 feet based on what the fire marshal wanted at Landon. Now, this is way off the subject. We put the road in at Landon Woods, 26 feet wide. I don't like it at all, and if I lived there, I wouldn't like it. It looks like a jet is gonna come right down on Landon Woods, but, you know, no other towns require it. I'm not arguing, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, from a visual standpoint, a 26-foot wide road is, to me, way overkill. And I know the fire marshal that was important to him. I don't know how he feels about this one, but I'm hoping he considers a standard 20-foot wide road like every other municipality that I deal with. But if that what it has to be, that'll be okay. But if you take a look at it, go over there and take a look at what 26 feet of asphalt looks like.
Just to kind of follow up on that, for the private drives within the code, and here in the fire marshal requirement, that's why it says the code itself doesn't have a specific width requirement.
There were widths for load bearing and widths for what we considered as private drives. We always allowed 4 lots of a private drive.
No, what I'm getting at is that our code talks about town roads. It doesn't have a specific standard.
Yeah, it does. I think it does. I think I do remember seeing that. You have to look at private drives.
Well, part of what goes along with that, though, is that we understand.
You're not talking about the sign guidelines, you're talking about
Actual part of
Yeah,
it. I
actually,
mean, obviously, highway law determines public, so.
that's something that you can, if you could find it, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But this also ties back to all the questions that came up with the number of houses that are on the site and to the map that is being done, is to determine what was available under standard development, formally do it. Frankly, my personal opinion, I don't support it. I don't think you're doing the calculation right, because I think your stormwater detention pond is considered a water body, regardless of what. One of the other ways we might up getting around it too is that since this is not a dedicated road, all of that space is owned by the landowners, house owners, so it's not subtracted out for development. So it doesn't have a road per se, that's why you have this number of houses. If it had an actual road that was built to town standards, which is 65 feet, this would never work. You could.
But we're not talking about,
So, no, it's a comment that came up is why there's so many houses. That's one of the factors that came into play with this, is that this development is proposed as a private driveway. It's not a town road. And so the land area that's now available for each of the parcels is much bigger because that land right of way is not considered in the size of it. Personally, my own opinion, it's gaming the system. It allows putting much more houses on the parcel, but we don't have anything that says you can't do it. Something that should be addressed in the future, but if someone wants to change the code, they can do it in the future, but right now, we don't have anything that says you have to subtract down the area of the road. That's why you would have this number of parcels. That's why it does look like it's jammed, this number of houses on a 5-acre parcel. But it conforms to what the requirements are of the current code.
Mr. Anderson, to answer your question, I don't think there's anything in private drives. There's minimum width, this is a very old highway specification from 1941. And, yeah, obviously we have the highway law now, New York State highway law determines public roads or highways.
Right.
Private roads, I don't see anything here.
There are other towns, other communities that do have that in the code. We don't.
Correct.
So that's what we have to work on.
And you may have them in your design guidelines, but I don't think you do. You don't know.
So just to, that's why it's the layout it is. Well, we go like to little tiny lot number 5.
I like it.
It looks jammed in on the thing. That's what they got. I mean, I like it. The grading area, when you're talking about the trees, anything that's inside the wheelie line, that's where everything that's going to get excavated, anything on the outside of the area that's in the preserve areas, those trees are going to stay up with the fluffers.
Yep. And
It's not like
enhance,
the entire
once I see
parcel.
it.
The entire parcel itself is not going to be completely level. You're going to retain whatever trees around the borders that you can.
Exactly. Some of it's like the 60 feet and the 15 feet on the north. We're not going to even let a machine. They're all screened off. It's caution tape. Once that major clearing is done where it has to be, then I'm there myself when they're clearing. I look at it and we'll enhance it with the neighbors. They're very welcome. Can all have my cell phone number and we'll make it extremely attractive.
Yeah, that's really the only comment I have. I hear the comments that the public has had. Looking at the drawings, I understand where we're at on the drawing. They are all valid concerns. Works within place.
Okay.
I have just one more comment before I go. One more.
you can't, you gotta come up with
Uh,
Actually, I have those over here. She's got, yeah.
that easement that goes along their property to the bird sanctuary area, that was all a deep ditch. They filled it in over the years so it would not drain into the state ditch. That's all been filled. Because when they first put that in, he guaranteed us, the man that built those houses, that our water problems would be taken care of by that ditch. And it's not to come this way, it should go to the bird sanctuary.
Okay. And when you're talking the bird sanctuaries,
Yeah.
thank you for that. There is the mountain strip of land that's adjacent to this parcel that once upon a time was supposed to have been an exit ramp off of 104 going over to Xerox Corporation. And that was dedicated to the town as parkland. That's where Portapon's Park was developed. So the trail, the Bird Sanctuary Trail, is a component of the town park that's next to this. The buffer itself is intended to help preserve the area. It is something that, because it's next to a town park, we have to take additional consideration of. And so the buffer helps provide that. Provided that the people that buy the land don't cut down on the trees.
The HOA is pretty strong.
Oh, but that was filled in over the years. And so it's like about soil here, like a.
Yeah,
So it needs to be cleaned out.
quite likely when this was owned by the state DOT, that was rated at one point, and this again is just speculation. I do know that it was an exit ramp that was supposed to run over the grass. And they may have put that in generalized structure.
Okay, let's close the public hearing, that's closed, we're done with discussion, and back up to the board. Comments, anything, where are we going with this? If you guys are okay with lot 5, fine.
Personally, I'm okay with that. That type of situation where you got a small backyard type angle, you see any kind of pie shaped lot.
Yes, it's not just that, David, I understand where you're going. My point of the whole thing was, this is why the PRC, this all came up, was lot 6, we've been at, taking 6 and 5 out, but 6 could be there. All you have to do is reduce the 100-foot lots, 9, 8, and 7, and move lot 6 down. That would create a bigger buffer along it. These side yards are close to the backyards of those houses right there. There's no greenery really to speak of.
Well, that's where the developer says he's going to be putting in trees and fence type thing or whatever.
Okay, but then you can put some trees in there, so where does the line, what are you creating as a buffer there? I mean, where are you, an actual buffer where people can't go and cut the tree down the next day? See what I'm saying?
The HOA is extremely,
Yeah, but
it's not a suggested thing.
Is it showing it as a buffer area?
It will be a.
It will be. It will be, but is it? On the
Well,
drawings?
we just made this request from PRC, we're sorry we're a little late, but just like the 60 feet will be a mandated deed restricted buffer with the HOA. When people
Okay,
have.
so if we move forward, I got you there.
Yep.
But if we move forward with a preliminary approval on this thing, then what we need to do is come back and show us where that line is, what you're doing in there, a drawing showing how you're berming at the end, or putting fence, whatever you're gonna do. So there's some detail on this stuff. 'Cause right now, I'm just gonna draw, all right?
No problem.
All right. Okay, so details on the drainage, all right. With that, anybody? Derek, you guys, Dave, you guys have any guys? You all right with it? All right. Yeah, I think that's,
Your minimum proposed lot width is 8 feet, correct?
minimum, no, minimum, I think it's
Code is
75.
Like, I'm looking on your sheet 4.
Yeah.
And I see required, it says minimum lot width 75,
Yeah.
proposed is 8.
Yeah, it should be 75, you notice that on the final plans will be showing 75 feet, which is what the code allows.
Okay, so what I want to check with this with lot 5 is that by the road, from at your property line to, this one also has turnaround in it, it's about 112 feet really at the center line of the private driveway. How wide is it, that parcel, at the back side of that house?
See, that's a good question, because something in there is always the mean lot width. Mean lot width.
We looked at the front, guys checked it, I think at Bill Pay it was 100. I got to be 10 feet off this side because there's an easement, so I got 90 feet left, and if I preserve 20 feet, I still have 70.
But the actual lot itself, is that on the back side of that building, the mean width of is the mean width of that lot 8 feet or 75 feet?
So the mean, somewhere.
It's a triangle.
So if you divide the front, which is 139, 140 feet, the average would be 70. You would have to widen that lot by 10 feet to get to 75 feet.
So then that parcel itself, which we would have to double check on the code, mean width of it, that parcel itself doesn't meet the width of the building.
We're happy to have a resolution state that has to, and if we have to move it 5 feet to make, I don't really understand the median thing, but absolutely will.
It's a triangle,
Yep.
so the mean width of it has to be 75 feet.
We'll
And
make
ideally,
it comply.
that would be on the backside of the house, or
Yep, good point, we'll make that comply.
But to make that lot comply, it's gonna want to go to the county request earlier. It's gonna
Might have to
want
slide over.
Area of the adjacent parcel.
As shown back of the lot, it's 95 feet. I
gotta hand up.
From lot line to the north property line.
What, just verify what the mean width is.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
What is the lot, I'm trying to figure this out. It's 139 feet. That's to the center of the access road to the detention pond.
The lot width would be along the driveway.
Yeah, it's along the driveway or the center of that driveway?
It's center of the driveway.
Yeah, that's what I
And
thought.
that's 139 feet.
Yeah.
On the driveway.
And the width of that lot at the back of the house is 95 feet.
Mhm.
So the lot itself, though, has to make sure that its average width is.
Yeah, mean width is 75. All right. All right, well, there's a few items on there. Well, okay, if you want to move forward, we'll have to start with the sequence.
So we want to do the secret now, or we're going to?
Might as well, if we're going to move forward with that.
Town of Webster Planning Board consider request by applicant inside land development to subdivide a 5.94 acre parcel having SBL number 080.05-2-2.1 into a 10-lot, single-family residential development located on Orchard Road as a cluster development in the residential R3 district. Planning board determined that the proposed action is an unlisted action under Part 617 of the State Environmental Quality Review Regulations. The planning board determined that the action is subject to a single agency review pursuant to Part 16.6B1 of seeker, and that it is the most appropriate agency to make the determination of significance. The planning board therefore designates itself lead agency for the proposed action. The planning board is giving consideration to the criteria for determining significance as set forth in section 617.7C1 of seeker, and has number 1, consider the information contained in the full environmental assessment form, part 1 dated October 4th, 2021. Number 2, consider public comments directed to the planning board during the public hearing on October 19th, 2021. And number 3, completed part 2 environmental assessment form. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Webster Planning Board hereby determines that the proposed action will not have a significant adverse effect on the environment for reasons set forth in the attached notice of determination of non-significance. Be it further resolved that the town of Webster Planning Board is authorized to make all actions reasonable and necessary to file a negative declaration and discharge of the town of Webster Planning Board's responsibility as lead agency for this action. Be it further resolved that the town of Webster Planning Board, based on the information and analysis above, the reference supporting documentation, and discussions of the action by the town of Webster Planning Board, as documented by the minutes for this meeting, that the proposed action will not result in significant environmental impacts. Be it further resolved that the town of Webster Planning Board therefore makes a determination of non-significance. Be it further resolved that the town of Webster Planning Board, based on the above reasons, issues a negative declaration as evidence of its determination.
Second. Motion and a second.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Giardina?
Aye.
Mr. Mixel?
Aye.
Mr. Malta?
Aye.
Mr. Arena?
Aye.
Mr. Pashon?
All right. Board's preference to move forward with the preliminary this evening?
Yeah, I'll make a preliminary approval. For the Sienna Reserve located on Orchard Road, immediately west of the bird sanctuary. Applicant land development, which is requesting preliminary approval. Accommodate 10 lots in residential development on 5.9 acres. Preliminary approval is subject to PRC comments, subject to a letter of credit posted with the town of Webster, if applicable. Subject to Monroe County Water Authority comments, if applicable. All improvements shall be constructed according to the specification of the town of Webster. All roadway construction will be in accordance with the specification and regulations set forth by the town of Webster. All site work is to be in compliance with the standards of the town of Webster. Preserve all mature trees on the site if possible. Mark said trees by the developers and engineer prior to commencing the site work. Comply with all requirements of any state, county, or town agency. Address drainage, landscaping, buffering, berming, snow storage.
Well, you want to add some of the things you want to put in, besides just the generic? You want a drawing showing the end of the proposed private drive, private road, to show you the intent for buffering, whether it's when you put a berm or so you want to have that in there. Additional landscaping. Proposed. You want to put in there all site work, all infrastructure and site work to be done prior to any building, you want to add that in there.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, that makes also the potential pond as well, right?
Yeah, that's part of the infrastructure. So the pad, swales, drainage, all that has to be done, like you're doing in every other project there. Okay?
You also want to tell me something about how lot 5 will look between the house and the
And what we need there to,
how the berming and landscaping is.
Landscaping in
Lot
there?
5.
show what landscaping would go in there?
Yeah,
Okay,
I mentioned that earlier.
yeah, that's good. So show landscaping, proposed landscaping along the north property line?
Yes.
Okay, landscape drawing actually, showing what you're doing there. Okay, you probably should add that in, okay.
Approvals are subject to drawing number, you got the drawing?
Yeah, I got the number. It's drawing number 2723-03.
dated October 4th.
Okay, that's the motion.
Okay, need a second.
Second.
Mr. Malta?
Aye.
Mr. Arena?
Aye.
Mr. Georgina?
Aye.
Mr. Mixel?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Kishon?
All right, for final, I'd suggest we get all this other paperwork done. All right? I guess we're all set for tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, ladies.